Greetings from our channel again. Bing Crosby and Bob Hope appeared to be the ideal Hollywood couple in 1947. However, there was a harsh reality hidden beneath their well-known road films. Crosby refused to go to his roasts, dubbed him a talentless hack, and forbade their wives from interacting with each other. Decades later, the true tale of how two comic icons became rivals and the startling treachery that was discovered comes to light. And ultimately ripped them to pieces. On May 29, 1903, Bob Hope was born Leslie Towns Hope in the London district of Eltham. William, his father, was a Somerset stonemason. Avis, his mother, was a Welsh light opera singer. Life in England was difficult and money was scarce. William made the decision to gamble on a brighter future. He emigrated to America in 1907 and landed in Cleveland, Ohio, where his brothers were already employed as steamfitters and plumbers. And 6 boys. The family reached Ellis Island on March 30, 1908, after traveling in third class on the SS Philadelphia. Bob's age was incorrectly registered by immigration agents as 2 years old rather than 4. For years, that mistake remained on his official records. Cleveland life was hard. The Hope family, who resided in a modest house close to Doan's Corners, had financial difficulties. They never ceased supporting her children and frequently took in boarders. She helped Bob cultivate his innate talent for entertaining and trained him to sing. He enjoyed making jokes, imitating others, and doing small dancing moves. His mother made sure he had the opportunity to develop his skills even in times of financial hardship. At the age of 10, Bob experienced performing for the first time. He participated in and won a Charlie Chaplin impersonation competition at Cleveland's Luna Park. He cherished the thrill of performing on stage. But he wasn't primarily interested in entertainment at the time. Rather, he developed an interest in boxing. In honor of boxer Packy McFarland, he entered the Ohio Novice Boxing Championships in 1919 using the moniker Packy East. Prior to falling in the finals, he had won 3 battles. He later made a joke about spending more time painting than Picasso. Bob took any work he could find to help support his family. He tried his hand at hustling pool, selling newspapers, working as a soda jerk, and selling shoes. These positions exposed him to a wide range of individuals. He listened to what made them laugh, how they moved, and how they spoke. Unbeknownst to him, he was collecting the elements that would eventually form his comedy. He began to take entertainment more seriously during the 1920s. Professionals like King Rastus Brown and Johnny Root taught him dancing, which helped him land menial vaudeville gigs. Mildred Rosequist was his initial performing partner, but her mother forbade her from traveling, so he partnered with Lloyd Durbin and then George Byron. He first played in tiny venues, such as the Bandbox Theater in Cleveland. He continued to work, get better, and advance. He made it to the Palace Theater in New York City, one of the largest vaudeville theaters in the nation, by 1931. Bob used vaudeville as a training ground. In contrast to the majority of comedians of the era, he adopted a more organic style. Instead of only telling prepared jokes, he preferred to engage the audience. He distinguished himself from other performers by fusing dance with snappy one-liners in his presentations. He transitioned from vaudeville to radio during the late 1930s. He made his first radio appearances as host of The Atlantic Family from 1935 to 1936 and The Intimate Review in 1935. Although he gained recognition from these early performances, he became a national celebrity thanks to Bob Hope's appearance on The Pepsodent Show. The Pepsodent Show was an immediate hit when it debuted on NBC. It was the most popular show in America at the beginning of the 1940s. Even as the years went by, for over a decade, millions of people tuned in each week to see what Hope would say next. Compared to other comedians of the era, his approach was distinct. Hope made himself the punchline, while most radio performers portrayed fictional characters. He kept his content interesting by making jokes about actual occurrences and daily life. He instructed his writers to read the newspaper and make gags out of the headlines. Hope selected only the best of the hundreds of jokes they wrote each week. The late-night talk show monologues that would emerge decades later were modeled after this fast-paced style. His accomplishments were not overlooked. He received 3 Peabody Awards, which are among the greatest accolades in broadcasting. The first was in 1944, acknowledging his wartime efforts to raise morale. His commitment was commended by the Peabody Committee, which stated that it was impossible to quantify the happiness he offered to the soldiers. He went on to win further Peabody Awards for his work in television and radio. The Pepsodent Show was not only the most well-liked radio program during its height, but it was also ingrained in American culture. It topped the charts from 1942 to 1944, demonstrating that comedy could be more than merely amusement. It might unite people. In difficult times, it might make you feel better. Hope's effect persisted even after radio faded. As a last tribute to a man who had shaped the entertainment industry for decades, he was admitted into the Radio Hall of Fame in 1990. Bob Hope didn't have a spectacular beginning in Hollywood. Going Spanish, a short picture that he subsequently quipped was so awful it should be used as punishment, was his debut film role in 1934. His trademark was that type of humor. Astute, self-aware, and consistently given at the ideal moment. Audiences adored him because he didn't take himself too seriously. The major broadcast in 1938 was his big break. This musical comedy wasn't your typical one. The Globe was grateful for the recollection. Hope and Shirley Ross performed the song, which quickly became popular. The tune became a part of who he was, and the lyrics were humorous and poignant. It encapsulated all that people admired about him: humor, charm, and a hint of honesty. Hope was already a well-known radio personality by the late 1930s. Hollywood, however, presented a distinct obstacle. His roles in movies capitalized on his innate sense of humor. He was usually the overconfident, quick-talking man who got himself into problems. The ideal example was The Cat and the Canary, 1939. Hope played a frightened hero in this horror comedy hybrid. The suspense-humor balance was spot on, and viewers couldn't get enough of him. Then came 1940's Road to Singapore. Something legendary was about to begin. Hope was paired with Bing Crosby and Dorothy Lamour in the inaugural installment of the Road to Film series. These films have it all: adventure, music, and endless humor. Crosby and Hope clicked like clockwork. The slick talker was Crosby. The cunning coward was Hope. The woman they both pursued was Lamour. These movies were unique because they felt so natural. The writing lacked a lot of humor. Throughout their continuous improvisation, Hope and Crosby joked with one another, and even broke the fourth wall. Their witty repartee gave the films a vitality that viewers adored. Road to Morocco, 1942, became one of the most popular entries in the series, which ran for more than 20 years. It was a straightforward recipe that never became stale. It was clear that Hope and Crosby were enjoying themselves and not just performing. Even beyond the way to Hope shone his ability to carry a film by himself. His talent for parody allowed him to create amusing comedy out of traditional genres. A prime example was The Pale Face, 1948. He portrayed a cowardly dentist who unintentionally rose to fame in the West. It was hilarious because Hope was a gunslinger, even though it was a crazy idea. He avoided being a tough guy. He portrayed the character who got into trouble but managed to get out alive. He continued to enjoy parody with My Favorite Brunette, 1947, satirizing detective movies with a comedy. Hope tries to survive a night at a spooky mansion in the 1940 horror comedy The Ghostbreakers. He wasn't an action star in the conventional sense. He didn't get out of problems by fighting. He got out by talking. He stood out from other prominent men of the era because of that. On May 6, 1941, Bob Hope embarked on his first USO tour, marking the beginning of a remarkable journey. He gave a live performance of his NBC radio show to a group of servicemen at March Field in California that evening. He had never done it before, and it was a significant event for the newly established USO. Eager to watch a Hollywood icon perform exclusively for them, soldiers crowded the theater. Hope provided them with a blend of humor and music, but more importantly, he made them laugh. His quips were short, incisive, and tailored to their needs. He discussed the peculiar world of military posts, their hardships, and their everyday existence. The theater performance lacked polish. It was intimate. Roared with laughter in response. Hope realized then that he had discovered his most significant audience. Everything changed because of that show. Hope performed in bases and camps around the United States during the course of the following year and a half. When World War II broke out, he performed abroad. He traveled through some of the world's most hazardous locations between 1941 and 1945. He gave performances in the Pacific and Europe, frequently close to areas of active conflict. In 2 months, he traveled 30,000 kilometers. He performed more than 150 gigs while in Australia, New Guinea, and Hawaii. There was hardly any infrastructure in certain areas. The equipment was faulty, and the stages were improvised. He was indifferent. What mattered were the soldiers. Hope's trips were dangerous. Given his significance to American morale, German soldiers kept tabs on his whereabouts. Shortly after his performance, towns were bombarded. The danger did not deter him. His behavior. He made jokes about a bomb dropping close by. He mocked himself for being there if the conditions were difficult. For that, soldiers adored him. There was more than just laughter in his performances. Troops were reminded of home by them. To add a unique touch to the performances, he called in singers, musicians, and dancers. Each performance was unique. He adapted his jokes to the audience, the setting, and the circumstances. He was doing more than amusing soldiers. He was getting through to them. Hope developed into more than just a comic over time. Since he was one of them and knew what they were going through, he became a symbol. His tours around Christmas were particularly significant. He played in frigid temperatures throughout the Korean War, sometimes only a few kilometers from combat zones. Despite domestic criticism, he continued to support the troops in Vietnam, where public opinion on the conflict was mixed. Some of his most significant tours were in Vietnam. He invited celebrities from Hollywood to perform with him, including in Margaret and Raquel Welch. Stages positioned in various places to confuse adversaries in order to evade attacks. These performances left a lasting impression on the troops. Many had never attended a live performance before, much less one including domestic celebrities. Hope's commitment remained unwavering. He was 87 when he went to Saudi Arabia in 1990 as part of Operation Desert Shield. Over the course of 57 USO trips spanning several conflicts and continents, he had been entertaining troops for almost 50 years. He was made an honorable veteran by Congress. More than any honor or trophy, it was the one term he held in high regard. In 1947, Bob Hope made his television debut as the host of the first commercial broadcast on KTLA in Los Angeles. However, it was NBC's Star-Spangled Review on April 9, 1950, that gave him his big break. His witty monologues, humorous sketches, and musical talents were broadcast on television by this variety show. With a devoted following, it was a logical move from radio. His lengthy collaboration with NBC began with the live broadcast from New York. Hope decided to concentrate on TV specials rather than a weekly series. This choice allowed him to continue working on movies and USO trips while maintaining high-caliber productions. He stood out due to his early success on television. He committed to a long-term deal with NBC in 1950, guaranteeing his broadcasting for many years to come. The transition to television was difficult for radio. Hope's timing and delivery, however, were equally effective on movie as they were on television. He was among the most well-known figures in entertainment by the early 1950s. He established an enduring tradition with his Christmas specials. During World War II, he began playing for American soldiers, but in 1954, he started recording these shows for television. He traveled all over the world to entertain Neil Armstrong and Raquel Welch for these specials. They weren't merely broadcasts on holidays. For soldiers who were distant from home, they were times of connection. January 1970 saw the broadcast of one of the most famous. His Vietnam Christmas presentation attracted 64% of the television audience, which at the time was the biggest percentage ever for an entertainment special. Pope's visits were more than mere amusement for soldiers engaged in a contentious conflict. They brought back memories of home. His Christmas specials carried on with the USO's 1990 Operation Desert Shield trip abroad. His legacy as more than just a comic was shaped by these shows. He was a person who used his gift to cheer up those who were serving their nation. Variety programs and late-night chat shows would subsequently be influenced by the format of Hope's television specials. In his introductory monologues, he humorously and quickly discussed current events. He packed every special with comic skits, music, and famous guests. He was relatable because of his sense of humor. Even when he was performing among the biggest names in Hollywood. He also presented Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater, an anthology series that included variety shows and dramatic plays, from 1963 to 1967. This demonstrated his versatility as a producer and performer. He hosted almost 300 television programs between 1950 and 1996, establishing a legacy that influenced entertainment in the United States. Incongruous. It is still unknown why he married Grace Louise Troxell in the first place. On January 25, 1933, while playing together in vaudeville, they were married in Erie, Pennsylvania. November 1934 marked the end of the marriage. Hope later denied it ever happened, which is what makes this rare. Court documents refuted the publicist's claims that the marriage license was an error. Hope secretly sent Troxel money for the remainder of her life in spite of this rejection. When you consider the timing of this story, it becomes even more bizarre. In mid-1933, while still legally married to Troxel Hope started an affair with Dolores Reed, a Ziegfeld performer who had recently joined his vaudeville troupe. In 1976, at the age of 65, she was still receiving financial support from the man who claimed she was never his wife. This begs the important question: was Hope a bigamist, or did he fabricate information about his second marriage? He married Reed in February 1934, but that was months before his divorce from Troxel was formally formalized. Hope and Reed's marriage certificate and wedding pictures have never been located. The formal recognition of their marriage has been questioned by biographers such as Richard Zoglin. Reed never seemed to care if it wasn't. She once stated that she wouldn't have stayed if their marriage hadn't been successful. Hope and Reed stayed together for almost 70 years, until his death in 2003, regardless of the reality. 4 kids from an Evanston, Illinois, orphanage: Linda, Anthony, Kelly, and Eleonora. Tracy Shore, the daughter of well-known New York bar owner Bernard Tut Shore, was also placed under their legal guardianship. The family kept a tight public image despite Hope's protracted absences and well-publicized affairs. While Hope established himself as one of the most well-known entertainers in America, Reed concentrated on raising the kids. Hope portrayed himself as a devout Catholic and a loving husband. Hope had numerous extramarital affairs with young showgirls and actors. Some didn't last long. Others continued for years. These tales remain secret because of his charisma and might. However, one affair almost brought him to light in a way he was powerless to stop. Hope got to know Barbara Payton, a Hollywood rising star, in 1949. She was youthful, attractive, and driven. He pursued Hope despite the fact that she was married. He loaded her with presents and rented her a fancy apartment. They had a covert affair for half a year. Desired more. She advocated for more funding and a stronger commitment. Hope, who is notoriously frugal with money, declined. He put an end to it by August. He paid her to keep her silent and turned to go. Their affair was kept a secret for years. Hope went on to other women, following his pattern. His crew put a lot of effort into managing his image. Rumors were promptly put to rest, but Payton violated the taboo in 1956. Her career had fallen apart. She was having personal and financial difficulties. She sold her story to Confidential out of desperation, and in the interview, she revealed Hope in a manner that no one else had. She characterized him as cruel, domineering, and frigid. His innocent persona was shattered when she disclosed information about their romance. Hope remained silent in answer. He was aware that getting involved in the issue would only exacerbate it. His public relations team intervened and controlled the harm. Hope's career continued, and the narrative vanished. Payton was not as fortunate. There were repercussions for speaking out against a major Hollywood figure. She never got her career back on track. She went deeper into addiction and destitution. She was forgotten by the time of her death in 1967. Hope, however, carried on living a double life. The public was never made aware of his long-term affair with actress Marilyn Maxwell, which was a well-kept secret in Hollywood. Rosemary Franklin, the winner of Miss World, and I had another relationship that lasted almost 30 years. During tours, insiders reported seeing young women waiting outside his hotel rooms. Some were beauty queens and models, while others were aspiring actors. Bob Hope never allowed these romances to affect his work, even if he relished the limelight. She accepted his infidelity even though Reed was aware of it. She acknowledged in a 1978 interview that she didn't think her husband was ever truly blue. But she decided to stay. Perhaps it was her Catholicism. Perhaps it was a sensible choice. For whatever reason, she stuck by him. Furthermore, no one else ever replaced her in spite of all the affairs. It was never intended for Bob Hope and Bing Crosby to work together. Road to Singapore was cast. 5 other pairs reviewed the script. Jack Oakie and Fred McMurray rejected it. Gracie Allen and George Burns also did. There were no further possibilities for the studio. Hope wasn't yet a movie star, but he was a budding comedian, fresh off The Cat and the Canary. Crosby was. Taking a chance, Paramount paired them up. Although they had previously interacted via radio and live performances, Hope and Crosby were not close. The main female character is Dorothy Lamour. Hope was billed third because Crosby was the major name. In October 1939, filming began, and the two actors soon settled into a routine. They started to break the fourth wall, improvise, and add gags. The initial draft did not include about half of the dialogue in the movie. The audience adored it, but Victor Schertzinger, the director, was irritated. The movie was a success. Paramount recognized promise for more, and Hope and Crosby had discovered something that worked. Together, they went on to produce 6 additional road films. In private, Crosby didn't think much of the relationship, calling him a talentless hack on multiple occasions. He wasn't kidding, Crosby was quiet and liked to be by himself. Hope, on the other hand, was gregarious and enjoyed being around people on set. Crosby stayed to himself, reading race results or sitting by himself, while Hope interacted with the crew. They didn't spend time together outside of work. Their differences were evident in other ways as well. Crosby did not attend the Friars Club roast honoring Hope. Even their wives never interacted. People observed that he was on the club's board. He dismissed the question of why he skipped it. "I didn't feel hungry." Another problem was money. Crosby initially made almost twice as much as Hope did on the first road movies because he was the greater star. That didn't sit well with Hope. He renegotiated his contract in 1947 and began earning Crosby's salary. However, their rivalry never truly stopped. The competition between Bob Hope and Bing Crosby was more than simply for the cameras, it was an integral element of their act, a continuous back and forth that added humor to their movies. Hope turned to the crowd and remarked, "He's going to sing, folks," in the 1952 film Road to Bali. "It's time to grab some popcorn." They continued the act in interviews and other appearances. Hope used to say that we went through life doing nothing for one another since there is nothing that I wouldn't do for Bing and nothing that he wouldn't do for me. They appeared to be an inseparable pair since their humor concealed any genuine strain. The public viewed them as two sides of the same coin, constantly entertaining and competing, even though in reality they were never close. Bob Hope went to his longtime friend Jimmy Stewart's funeral at the age of 94. People saw how weak he appeared. He took the stage during the Primetime Emmy Awards' 50th anniversary a year later. He was joined by Sid Caesar and Milton Berle. Gloria Stewart and Fay Wray, two Hollywood icons, were also present. That brought him fame. He was present when the Library of Congress opened the Bob Hope Gallery of American Entertainment in 1999. 2 significant exhibitions about his life and career were held at the institution in his honor. He made one of his final public appearances at the Hope Classic Golf Tournament the following year, when he was 97 years old. He gave Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik a hug there. His health was deteriorating by that time. He was admitted to the hospital with pneumonia a year later. Never do, no matter how old he is. He celebrated his 100th birthday on May 29. 2003, the intersection of Vine and Hollywood was christened Bob Hope Square by the city of Los Angeles. Bob Hope Day was proclaimed in 35 states. His sense of humor was acute even then. "I'm so ancient that they've canceled my blood type," he joked. Hope had never revealed his faith to others. However, he became a Catholic 7 years prior to his passing. He also experienced a strange encounter with death. 5 years prior to his death, in 1998, an Associated Press obituary was accidentally published. Before they knew he was still alive, the U.S. House of Representatives even declared him dead. He spent the majority of his old age in comparatively excellent health, albeit he got feeble in his latter years. Bob Hope died at his home in Toluca Lake, California, early on July 27, 2003. 2 months have passed since his 100th birthday. Later, his grandson revealed that Hope's wife Dolores asked him where he wanted to be buried as he lay dying. "Surprise me," he said simply. His bones were interred at San Fernando Mission Cemetery in a mausoleum vault. They were then relocated to the cemetery's neighbor, the Bob Hope Memorial Garden. Dolores lived for 8 more years before dying at the age of 102. Cartoonists from all across the world honored him after his passing. He was welcomed to paradise by his lifelong buddy Bing Crosby, who passed away in 1977. It was the ideal way to finish a people's laughter.